Amy Rodriguez stretched her legs under the small metal desk and rubbed her tired eyes with the back of her hand. The glow from multiple monitors casting pale blue light across her face in the dimly lit observation chamber, located deep within the rocky terrain of planet Theta 7, where few beings dared to venture due to its reputation as a death world that consumed visitors whole. The young cadet had been assigned to this remote monitoring station 3 months ago as part of her final training rotation, spending long hours tracking deep space communications and scanning for unusual energy signatures, while most of the galaxy slept peacefully, unaware of the constant vigilance required to maintain interstellar security protocols across the vast emptiness of space. Her coffee had grown cold in the insulated thermos beside her keyboard, the bitter liquid forgotten as she focused intently on the steady stream of data flowing across her screens, each blinking dot representing a different vessel or communication relay somewhere in the surrounding star systems, all of them following predictable patterns that she had memorized during her countless hours of solitary duty. A soft rumbling sound echoed from the corner of the chamber where Rex lay sprawled across a thick sleeping mat, his massive form rising and falling with each slow breath, the Shadow Maw's dark fur rippling slightly as dreams of ancient hunts played through his mind, while his powerful muscles remained coiled and ready for instant action. Despite his apparent state of rest, Amy smiled slightly as she watched her bonded companion, remembering the first time she had encountered a Shadow Maw during her training on Ragnar Prime, where military instructors had warned the cadets that these apex predators could tear through reinforced armor plating like tissue paper and moved through dense jungle terrain with the silence of falling snow. The bonding process between humans and Shadow Maws remained poorly understood by most alien species, who viewed it as either impossible or deeply disturbing, unable to comprehend how two different species could form such intimate psychic connections that allowed them to share thoughts, emotions, and tactical awareness across vast distances without any technological assistance whatsoever. Rex's ears twitched suddenly, rotating toward the sealed entrance of the observation post like organic radar dishes detecting something that Amy's human senses had missed completely. His yellow eyes remaining closed, but his breathing pattern shifting from deep sleep to alert awareness in the span of a single heartbeat. Amy noticed the change immediately through their mental link, feeling a subtle tension creeping through her own nervous system. As Rex's instincts began processing information from the environment around them, his enhanced senses capable of detecting threats long before any human technology could register their presence. The communication arrays continued their steady beeping and chirping, displaying the same routine traffic patterns that Amy had monitored for weeks without interruption. Merchant vessels following established trade routes, military patrols conducting scheduled sweeps, and research ships collecting scientific data from nearby asteroid fields. However, something felt different about this particular morning shift, though Amy couldn't identify exactly what had triggered her growing sense of unease. A feeling that seemed to emanate from Rex's heightened alertness and spread through their shared consciousness like ripples across the surface of a still pond. She reached for her thermos and unscrewed the metal cap, the familiar ritual of preparing to drink her cold coffee, serving as a small comfort against the mounting tension that continued building in the back of her mind. Despite the apparent normalcy of everything around her, the liquid tasted stale and bitter, but Amy forced herself to swallow it anyway while keeping her eyes fixed on the sensor displays, searching for any anomalies or unusual patterns that might explain Rex's sudden change in behavior, though the screens showed nothing except the endless dance of distant starships. A new set of energy signatures appeared at the very edge of her scanning range, faint blips that could have been debris or asteroid fragments drifting through space. But their movement patterns seemed too coordinated and purposeful to be random space junk floating aimlessly through the cosmic void. Amy leaned forward in her chair and adjusted the sensitivity settings on her long-range scanners, trying to get a clearer reading on the mysterious contacts, while Rex lifted his massive head from his sleeping mat, golden eyes now fully open and focused on the reinforced doctor leading to the outside world. The signatures were definitely artificial, moving in formation toward the observation post with careful precision that suggested military training and tactical coordination, though their design signatures didn't match any known human or allied vessel configurations in Amy's database of friendly spacecraft. Rex rose to his feet with fluid grace, his enormous frame stretching nearly 4 feet at the shoulder, muscles rippling beneath his dark coat as he moved to position himself between Amy and the entrance, instinctively adopting a protective stance that had been hardwired into his species through millions of years of evolution. Amy felt her heartbeat accelerate as the implications became clear, but she forced herself to remain calm and continue her monitoring duties, taking another slow sip of cold coffee while her fingers moved across the keyboard, activating silent alarm protocols that would alert Fleet Command to potential hostile activity in the sector. The approaching vessels were maintaining radio silence and using sophisticated cloaking technology that made detailed scans nearly impossible, tactics commonly employed by pirates, slavers, and other criminal organizations that preyed on isolated outposts and merchant shipping throughout the frontier regions. Through their psychic connection, Amy sensed Rex's predatory excitement beginning to build, the Shadow Maw's hunting instincts, recognizing the approach of potential prey, even as his protective nature demanded that he shield his human partner from whatever dangers were heading their way across the emptiness of space. Amy knew that most alien species viewed humans as weak and primitive creatures, suitable only for capture and sale in underground markets where exotic specimens commanded high prices from wealthy collectors. But they had never encountered humans bonded with Shadow Maws before. The observation post's automated defenses remained inactive, designed to avoid detection rather than engage in combat, leaving Amy and Rex alone against whatever force was approaching through the darkness between the stars, with unknown intentions and superior numbers. Amy finished the last of her cold coffee and screwed the cap back onto her thermos with steady hands, the simple action helping to center her thoughts and prepare her mind for whatever was about to unfold in the next few minutes as the mysterious vessels continued their relentless approach toward her isolated position. Rex's low growl filled the chamber, a sound that vibrated through the metal walls and floors like distant thunder, his powerful vocal cords producing frequencies that could paralyze prey with terror or warn competitors to stay away from his chosen territory. The young cadet felt a strange sense of calm settling over her as she watched the enemy contacts grow larger on her screens, knowing that she and Rex had trained for exactly this type of scenario during their months together on Ragnar Prime. Though she had never expected to face real combat so soon after completing her certification, Amy placed her hand on Rex's massive head, feeling the coiled power beneath his fur and the fierce intelligence that burned behind his golden eyes. Reminder that humans were no longer alone in their struggle to survive and thrive among the stars, filled with creatures that viewed them as nothing more than valuable commodities to be bought and sold. Captain Vorth's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction as his hunting fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Theta 7 system, their sleek Krillian vessels immediately activating cloaking fields that bent light around their hulls, rendering them nearly invisible to most scanning technologies used by the primitive human military forces. The veteran raider had conducted dozens of successful hunts across the frontier sectors, capturing exotic specimens for wealthy collectors, who paid premium prices for rare creatures, and humans had recently become the most sought-after prizes in the underground markets, due to their unusual adaptability and surprising intelligence levels. According to his intelligence sources, this particular observation post contained only a single human cadet conducting routine monitoring duties, making it an ideal target for a quick capture operation that would yield significant profits with minimal risk to his crew members or their expensive specialized equipment. Vorth's second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Kelth, reviewed the tactical display showing their target location, a small fortified structure built into the rocky landscape of the death world below, surrounded by the twisted remains of metal trees and crystalline formations that glowed with residual radiation. The human should be isolated and unaware of our presence, Kelth reported through their communication system, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never encountered serious resistance during previous hunting expeditions against supposedly inferior species throughout the galaxy. The Krillian captain nodded his approval while studying detailed scans of the observation post, noting the minimal defensive systems and single life sign detected within the structure, though their sensors couldn't identify the specific type of creature accompanying the human target. Krillian hunting doctrine relied on overwhelming speed and coordination, surrounding their prey before they could react or call for assistance. then using specialized containment fields and neural disruptors to subdue targets without causing permanent damage that might reduce their market value. Deploy the containment web around the facility, Forth ordered his crew, watching as 6 smaller hunter craft detached from the main vessel and began moving toward the planet's surface, their pilots maintaining radio silence to avoid detection by human monitoring equipment. Each hunter ship carried a crew of 3 Krillians armed with capture nets, stun weapons, and portable containment units designed specifically for transporting live specimens across interstellar distances while keeping them unconscious and healthy during the journey to auction houses. The Krillians had perfected their hunting techniques over centuries of raiding less advanced civilizations, learning to identify the weakest members of each species and exploit their psychological vulnerabilities to minimize resistance during capture operations. Vorth felt confident that this mission would proceed according to standard protocols, allowing his crew to secure another valuable human specimen while maintaining their reputation as the most successful hunting organization operating in the Outer Rim territories, where law enforcement remained scarce and ineffective. Meanwhile, Amy Rodriguez continued monitoring her sensor displays, while Rex positioned himself near the observation post's main entrance, both of them aware that hostile forces were closing in, but maintaining their calm exterior to avoid alerting the approaching raiders to their state of readiness. The Shadow Maw's enhanced senses could detect the approaching Krillian vessels despite their cloaking technology, picking up subtle vibrations in the planet's magnetic field and trace amounts of exotic matter emissions that their engines produced while maneuvering through the upper atmosphere. Amy felt Rex's anticipation building through their mental connection, the predator's hunting instincts responding to the scent of prey that was foolishly entering his territory, without understanding the true nature of the creatures they were attempting to capture for their collection. The Krillian hunters began their final approach, moving in a coordinated pattern that had proven successful against countless other species throughout their careers, their overconfidence preventing them from recognizing the signs that this particular hunt might end very differently than they expected. Captain Vorth reviewed his crew's positions on the tactical display, noting that all 6 hunter craft had reached their designated coordinates around the observation post, creating an escape-proof perimeter that would contain any attempts by the human to flee once the attack began. "All units report ready," Kelth announced, his voice filled with the same casual arrogance that had carried them through dozens of previous raids against defenseless targets who lacked the means to mount any significant resistance against Krillian military technology. Amy reached for a small packet of sugar substitute that she kept in her desk drawer, tearing it open with steady fingers while watching the energy signatures on her screens grow stronger as the cloaked vessels moved into their final positions around her facility. She poured the artificial sweetener into her thermos and stirred it slowly with a metal spoon, the rhythmic clinking sound echoing through the chamber, while Rex's breathing deepened and his muscles began to tense in preparation for the violence that was about to unfold. The Krillians activated their energy-dampening fields, designed to disrupt human communication equipment and prevent their target from sending distress signals to nearby fleet installations, though Amy had already transmitted her situation report using quantum entanglement protocols that couldn't be jammed. Vorth gave the final attack order, sending his 6 hunter teams toward the observation post's various entry points, each group carrying specialized breaching charges that would create multiple simultaneous openings in the structure's defensive barriers. The lead hunter craft touched down on the rocky terrain surrounding Amy's position, their crews disembarking with practiced efficiency while maintaining perfect coordination that had been drilled into them through years of similar operations across the galaxy. Amy took a careful sip of her newly sweetened coffee and glanced toward Rex, who had become completely motionless except for the steady rise and fall of his breathing, every fiber of the Shadow Maws being focused on the approaching threat like a coiled spring waiting for release. The Krillian ground teams activated their personal cloaking devices and began moving toward their assigned breach points, their confidence absolute as they prepared to capture another helpless human specimen for the thriving slave markets that operated in the lawless regions beyond civilized space. Through her peripheral vision, Amy noticed the subtle changes in the electromagnetic readings on her sensor array, indicators that suggested powerful energy fields were being deployed around her position. Though the Krillians believed their technology remained undetected, Rex's ears swiveled toward different points around the observation post, tracking multiple approaching enemies with the precision of a natural-born predator whose ancestors had survived on one of the most dangerous worlds in known space by developing senses that could detect threats through solid rock. Emmy felt a strange sense of peace settling over her as she realized that the Krillian hunters had made a fundamental error in their intelligence gathering. Assuming that humans remained the same helpless prey species that they had first encountered decades ago during their initial expansion into this region, the attacking aliens had no comprehension of the changes that had occurred within human military doctrine, the new partnerships that had been forged with apex predators from death worlds like Ragnar Prime, or the psychological bonds that allowed two species to function as a single, deadly hunting unit. Captain Vorth monitored his team's progress from orbit, already calculating the profits that this successful mission would generate, while his hunters prepared to spring their carefully planned ambush against what they believed to be a defenseless human cadet, isolated on a remote world. Amy finished stirring her coffee and set the spoon aside, her movements deliberate and unhurried despite the approaching danger, while Rex gathered his powerful hindquarters beneath him and prepared to demonstrate exactly why shadow maws were considered the apex predators of their homeworld. The first breach charge detonated against the observation post's reinforced door with a thunderous roar that shook dust from the ceiling panels, followed immediately by 5 more explosions around the facility's perimeter as the Krillian hunting teams executed their coordinated assault with military precision. Smoke and debris filled the air as alien warriors poured through the smoking openings in the structure's defensive barriers, their weapons raised and containment fields activated, expecting to find a terrified human cadet cowering behind her monitoring equipment while pleading for mercy. Instead, they discovered Amy Rodriguez sitting calmly at her desk, taking another slow sip from her thermos while studying the tactical display that showed their positions with perfect accuracy, her expression as relaxed as someone reading the morning news rather than facing imminent capture by hostile forces. "Surrender immediately, human," barked the lead Krillian hunter, his translator device converting his chittering vocalizations into standard galactic common, while his squad mates spread out to cover all possible escape routes through the damaged chamber. Amy looked up from her screens with mild interest, as if the armed aliens were nothing more than unexpected visitors who had arrived during her coffee break, then glanced toward the corner where Rex had been resting moments before. Though the shadow maw was no longer visible to the intruders, the Krillians advanced cautiously into the room, their sensors scanning for hidden weapons or defensive systems while maintaining perfect formation, their confidence growing as they observed the apparently defenseless human female, who showed no signs of panic or resistance. "Your species will bring excellent prices in the outer markets." Captain Vorth's voice crackled through their communication devices as he monitored the operation from orbit, already imagining the profits that would flow from this successful capture mission. Amy set her thermos down on the metal desk with a soft clink, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the tense atmosphere of the smoke-filled chamber, then looked directly at the lead hunter with eyes that held no trace of fear or desperation. "Rex," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the room with the same casual tone someone might use to ask for more coffee. "Hunt." The word had barely left her lips when the shadows in the corner of the chamber exploded into motion, revealing 8 feet of pure predatory fury as Rex launched himself at the nearest Krillian with speed that defied belief, his massive jaws closing around the alien's torso before it could even register what was happening. The hunter's scream cut off abruptly as titanium-hard teeth punched through his armor plating like it was made of tissue paper, while Rex's powerful jaw muscles generated enough crushing force to snap the Krillian's spine in 3 places simultaneously. 2 more aliens died in the next heartbeat as the shadow maw's claws raked across their bodies, the razor-sharp talons that had evolved to tear through the armored hides of Ragnar Prime's apex predators, making short work of advanced military equipment designed to stop energy weapons and projectile rounds. Amy turned back to her monitoring station and began typing her incident report while the sounds of terror and dying filled the air behind her, Rex's hunting instincts taking over completely as he moved through the Krillian assault team like a force of nature unleashed in a confined space. The remaining hunters tried to bring their weapons to bear on the massive predator, but Rex's movements followed patterns that had been refined through millions of years of evolutionary pressure on a world where hesitation meant death, and only the fastest, strongest, and smartest creatures survived. Stun bolts and containment nets passed harmlessly through empty air where the Shadow Maw had been a split second earlier, while his counterattack struck with surgical precision against vulnerable points in Krillian anatomy that Amy had shared with him through their psychic connection. "Impossible," gasped one of the surviving aliens as Rex's claws opened his throat. The hunter's life essence sprang across the metal walls while his body collapsed in a twitching heap beside his fallen comrades. Amy paused in her typing to take another sip of coffee, savoring the sweetness of the artificial sweetener while Rex continued his methodical destruction of the alien hunting party, each kill executed with the same casual efficiency that characterized all Shadow Maw feeding behaviors. The Krillian communication systems crackled with panicked reports from the other breach teams as they encountered similar resistance, their carefully planned ambush dissolving into chaos as they realized that the human's pet was systematically slaughtering their most experienced warriors. Captain Vorth's confident voice had been replaced by urgent commands as he tried to coordinate a withdrawal, but Rex was already moving toward the other breach points with predatory intelligence that allowed him to anticipate his enemies' movements and cut off their escape routes. Amy accessed her secure communication channel and transmitted an update to Fleet Command, reporting hostile alien activity and requesting immediate interception of the Krillian vessels before they could escape to warn other hunting fleets about the new reality of human Shadow Maw partnerships. Through the observation post's damaged walls, she could hear the sounds of alien screams and weapons fire as Rex continued his hunt, methodically eliminating every member of the attacking force while following tactical guidance that Amy provided through their mental link. The Shadow Maw's enhanced senses allowed him to track multiple targets simultaneously, while his experience hunting the deadliest creatures on Ragnar Prime had taught him to identify weaknesses in his opponent's defensive strategies and exploit them with ruthless efficiency. One by one, the panicked voices on the Krillian communication network fell silent as Rex moved through their positions like a shadow of death, his dark fur helping him blend into the rocky terrain while his powerful muscles propelled him across distances that would challenge most vehicles. Amy finished documenting the initial phase of the attack and reached for a nutrition bar from her emergency supplies, unwrapping it slowly, while listening to the distinctive sound of Rex's claws scraping against alien armor, plating somewhere in the facility's lower levels. The Krillians had based their entire tactical doctrine on the assumption that humans were weak, isolated creatures who could be overwhelmed through superior numbers and technology, but they had never encountered a species that formed true partnerships with apex predators. Rex's hunting behavior demonstrated the fundamental difference between tool use and symbiosis, as the Shadow Maw wasn't simply following human commands, but rather coordinating with Amy as an equal partner in a relationship that amplified both species' natural capabilities. The observation post's automated systems began reporting multiple containment breaches as Rex's assault continued, though the security alert seemed almost anticlimactic compared to the sounds of absolute carnage echoing through the facility's corridors and ventilation shafts. Amy consulted her tactical display and noted that only 2 Krillian life signs remained active within the facility, both of them moving desperately toward what they believed were escape routes, unaware that Rex had already positioned himself to intercept their retreat. She took another bite of her nutrition bar and considered whether she should intervene to capture at least one alien alive for interrogation purposes, though Rex's predatory instincts seemed focused on eliminating all threats to his bonded partner's safety. The Shadow Maw's species had never developed concepts like mercy or prisoner-taking during their evolution on Ragnar Prime, where every encounter with another creature was a life-or-death struggle for survival, and Rex saw no reason to change those successful strategies. Now Captain Vorth's voice returned to the communication network, this time issuing frantic orders for his orbital vessels to prepare for emergency extraction, though he was beginning to realize that none of his ground teams would be available for pickup. Amy finished her nutrition bar and crumpled the wrapper into a small ball, tossing it into the waste receptacle beside her desk, while the final Krillian screams faded into silence, leaving only the sound of Rex's satisfied purring as he completed his hunt. Rex emerged from the lower levels of the observation post with alien blood dripping from his massive jaws, his golden eyes scanning the devastated chamber where Amy continued working at her monitoring station, surrounded by the twisted remains of what had once been an elite Krillian hunting squad. The Shadowmaw species had evolved on Ragnar Prime, a world where every creature was either predator or prey, and there existed no middle ground between hunters and the hunted, a harsh reality that had shaped Rex's ancestors into perfect killing machines over countless millennia of brutal natural selection. Amy felt a surge of satisfaction through their psychic bond as Rex approached her position, his massive paws stepping carefully around the scattered debris and alien corpses while maintaining the alert posture of a predator whose hunt was far from finished. Through their mental connection, she could sense the tactical information that Rex had gathered during his assault on the Krillian ground teams, including the locations of their remaining spacecraft and the movement patterns of any surviving crew members who might attempt to escape. The observation post's communication array crackled with panicked transmissions from Captain Vorth's orbital vessels, as the Krillian commander struggled to understand how his experienced hunting teams had been completely eliminated by what his intelligence reports described as a single defenseless human cadet. All ground teams report status immediately. Vorth's voice carried a note of desperate urgency that Amy found almost amusing, given the alien's earlier confidence about capturing her for his collection of exotic specimens. Amy reached over to scratch behind Rex's ears, her fingers finding the sensitive spots that always made the massive predator purr with contentment, while she used her free hand to access the tactical display, showing the positions of the remaining Krillian vessels. The Shadowmaw leaned into her touch, his rumbling purr filling the chamber with a sound like distant thunder, though his eyes remained fixed on the breached entrance where more enemies might appear at any moment. Human military doctrine had evolved significantly since first contact with alien civilizations, moving beyond simple tool use and technology to embrace the concept of true interspecies partnerships that combined the unique strengths of different evolutionary paths. The Krillians, and most other alien species, viewed such relationships as impossible or unnatural, unable to comprehend how two different creatures could share thoughts and coordinate their actions without technological interfaces or hierarchical command structures. Rex represented the culmination of humanity's greatest discovery since developing faster-than-light travel, the realization that some bonds transcended species barriers and created something greater than the sum of their individual parts. Amy pulled up the facility's external sensor feeds, watching as the surviving Krillian pilots prepared their spacecraft for emergency departure, their earlier arrogance replaced by terror as they realized that their entire hunting expedition had become a catastrophic failure. "Looks like they want to leave without saying goodbye," Amy murmured to Rex, who responded with a low growl that vibrated through the metal flooring beneath their feet. The Shadowmaw's enhanced senses could track the electromagnetic signatures of the alien vessels even when they activated their cloaking systems, abilities that had developed during millions of years of hunting prey that used natural camouflage and environmental mimicry. Through their bond, Amy shared her tactical analysis with Rex, highlighting the most efficient routes to intercept the fleeing aliens while avoiding their remaining weapon systems. Turning their escape attempt into another phase of the hunt. Rex's species had never developed concepts like mercy or restraint when dealing with threats to their territory, viewing every challenge as a test of survival that demanded absolute commitment to victory regardless of the cost to their opponents. Amy activated the observation post's emergency protocols, sealing the facility's remaining functional systems, while preparing to accompany Rex on the next phase of their mission, knowing that allowing even one Krillian to escape would compromise the security of other human installations. The young cadet had trained extensively with Rex during their months on Ragnar Prime, learning to coordinate their movements and share sensory information in ways that amplified both their natural abilities and created tactical advantages that neither species could achieve alone. Captain Vorth's increasingly frantic communications revealed his growing desperation as he tried to contact his ground teams, unaware that Rex had methodically eliminated every member of his hunting force with the same casual efficiency that characterized all Shadowmaw feeding behaviors. Amy gathered her essential equipment, while Rex positioned himself near the main entrance, both of them preparing to continue their hunt beyond the confines of the damaged observation post, where the remaining aliens waited in their supposedly secure spacecraft. The Krillian vessels began powering up their engines for immediate departure, their crews abandoning all pretense of maintaining operational security as they prioritized escape over completing their mission objectives. Through the facility's external cameras, Amy could see the alien ships hovering above the rocky terrain, their hull plating scorched by atmospheric entry, and their weapon systems oriented toward the observation post in case any surviving humans attempted to interfere with their withdrawal. Rex's tail swished with anticipation as he sensed the approaching climax of their hunt, his predatory instincts recognizing that the most dangerous phase of any pursuit occurred when cornered prey became desperate enough to take extreme risks. Amy checked her sidearm and ensured that her communication equipment remained functional, though she suspected that Rex's natural abilities would prove more decisive than any human technology during the coming confrontation with the fleeing Krillians. The Shadow Maw had demonstrated throughout their partnership that his species possessed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate enemy movements and exploit weaknesses in their defensive strategies, skills that had been refined through constant warfare on their homeworld. Captain Vorth issued final evacuation orders to his remaining crews, his voice carrying the bitter acknowledgement that this hunting expedition had transformed from a routine capture operation into a survival scenario that threatened his entire organization. Amy felt Rex's excitement building through their mental link as he prepared to demonstrate why humans were no longer the helpless prey that alien hunters had once considered them to be, but rather partners in apex predator relationships that redefined the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The observation post's automated systems began their shutdown sequence as Amy and Rex prepared to leave the facility, both of them focused on ensuring that none of the surviving Krillians would escape to warn other hunting fleets about the new reality of human Shadow Maw partnerships. Rex's golden eyes reflected the light from Amy's monitoring equipment as he waited for her signal. Every muscle in his powerful frame coiled for explosive action while his enhanced senses tracked the movements of their remaining enemies. Amy took one final sip of her coffee and sealed the thermos, knowing that the next phase of their mission would determine whether the galaxy continued to view humans as valuable prey or began recognizing them as something far more dangerous. The sounds of Krillian engines echoed across the barren landscape as the alien vessels prepared for their desperate escape attempt, unaware that their hunters had already become the hunted in a deadly game, where only one side understood the true rules of engagement. Amy stepped through the twisted remains of the observation post's main entrance, while Rex bounded ahead of her, his massive form moving across the rocky terrain with fluid grace that belied his enormous size, every movement calculated to bring him closer to the remaining Krillian vessels without revealing his position. The alien ships hovered approximately 200 meters above the barren landscape, their pilots maintaining altitude while desperately scanning for any signs of surviving ground teams, unaware that death stalked them from below in the form of a predator whose species had perfected the art of hunting, flying prey. Rex's enhanced vision could track the subtle heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions generated by the Krillian vessels, despite their cloaking technology, abilities that had evolved during millions of years pursuing aerial creatures across the vertical terrain of Ragnar Prime's mountain ranges. Through their psychic bond, Amy shared her tactical analysis of the alien formation, identifying weak points in their defensive positioning while Rex provided sensory data about wind patterns, terrain features, and potential approach routes that human technology couldn't detect. The lead Krillian vessel began broadcasting on emergency frequencies, sending distress signals that revealed their growing panic as Captain Vorth realized that his hunting expedition had encountered something far beyond their understanding or ability to control. Amy crouched behind a cluster of crystalline formations that provided cover from aerial observation while Rex circled around to position himself for an ambush, his dark fur helping him blend into the shadows cast by the planet's twin suns. The Shadow Maw's hunting strategy reflected millions of years of evolutionary refinement, as his ancestors had learned to coordinate pack attacks against creatures that possessed natural flight capabilities, developing techniques that remained effective against technological equivalents. Captain Vorth's voice crackled through the communication channels as he issued increasingly desperate orders to his remaining crews, demanding explanations for the Complete loss of contact with their ground teams while maintaining formation discipline. Despite their obvious terror, Rex gathered his powerful hindquarters beneath him and prepared for a leap that would carry him nearly 30 meters vertically. Using muscle groups that had been specifically adapted for launching attacks against aerial targets from concealed positions, Amy watched through her scope as the nearest Krillian vessel lowered its altitude slightly, apparently attempting to scan for survivors among the wreckage of their assault teams, bringing it within range of Rex's extraordinary jumping ability. The Shadowmaws species had developed specialized hunting techniques for dealing with flying prey, including the ability to calculate complex trajectory paths that accounted for wind, resistance, gravitational effects, and target movement patterns with instinctive precision through their mental link. Amy provided Rex with real-time updates about the alien vessel's position and movement vector, while he adjusted his launch angle to compensate for the spacecraft's defensive maneuvering patterns. The Krillian pilot never saw the massive predator that exploded from the rocky terrain below his ship. Rex's claws extended to their full length as he struck the vessel's hull, with enough force to puncture the reinforced plating and tear through essential systems. Metal screamed and sparks flew as Rex's talons raked across the spacecraft's exterior, his weight and momentum causing the vessel to spin wildly, before crashing into the planet's surface in a shower of debris and secondary explosions. Amy emerged from her concealment and approached the wreckage, while Rex extracted himself from the twisted remains of the alien ship, shaking crystalline dust from his fur while surveying the destruction he had caused with casual satisfaction. The surviving Krillian vessels immediately gained altitude and began evasive maneuvers, their crews finally understanding that they faced a threat unlike anything in their extensive experience, hunting supposedly inferior species throughout the galaxy. Captain Vorth's communications revealed his complete bewilderment as he struggled to comprehend how a single creature could destroy a heavily armored spacecraft using nothing but natural weapons and physical strength. Rex positioned himself for another attack, while Amy used her tactical display to predict the movement patterns of the remaining alien vessels, coordinating their next assault through the psychic connection that allowed them to function as a unified hunting unit. The second Krillian ship attempted to maintain safe altitude while providing covering fire for its companion vessel. But Rex's enhanced agility allowed him to dodge their energy weapons while closing the distance between himself and his prey. Amy watched with professional interest as Rex demonstrated the hunting techniques that had made Shadowmaws the apex predators of their homeworld, using terrain features and natural camouflage to approach targets that believed themselves safely beyond his reach. The alien pilot's panic became audible through their communication system as Rex's leap carried him directly onto the spacecraft's hull, his claws finding purchase on the smooth metal surfaces while his jaws sought vulnerable points in the vessel's construction. Krillian engineering had never encountered creatures capable of treating starships as prey animals, leaving their designs vulnerable to attack methods that seemed impossible, according to their understanding of natural limitations. Rex's powerful jaw muscles generated enough crushing force to breach the ship's hull integrity, causing catastrophic decompression that disabled the vessel's flight systems and sent it spiraling toward the rocky surface below. Amy advanced toward the crash site while monitoring the tactical situation, noting that only one Krillian vessel remained airborne, its crew apparently paralyzed by terror as they witnessed the systematic destruction of their hunting fleet. The final alien ship began climbing toward orbital altitude in a desperate attempt to escape, but Rex was already calculating his next attack vector, while Amy provided targeting data through their shared consciousness. Captain Vorth's voice had devolved into incoherent babbling as he tried to process the complete failure of what should have been a routine capture operation against a helpless human specimen, isolated on a remote frontier. World Rex's third leap carried him higher than either of his previous attacks, his powerful legs propelling him through the thin atmosphere with enough velocity to intercept the fleeing spacecraft before it could reach the safety of space. The impact sent shockwaves through the alien vessel's structure as Rex's claws penetrated its hull plating, while his weight caused the ship to lose altitude and begin an uncontrolled descent toward the planet's surface below. Amy arrived at the crash site just as Rex emerged from the wreckage, carrying a severely injured but still living Krillian in his massive jaws. The alien's armor cracked and his breathing labored, but his vital signs stable enough for interrogation. The wounded creature looked up at Amy with eyes that reflected absolute terror, finally understanding that humans were no longer the helpless prey that his species had assumed them to be for so many years. Captain Vorth remained in orbit, his voice silent on the communication channels as he contemplated the complete destruction of his hunting fleet and the implications for future operations against human targets throughout the frontier sectors. Amy knelt beside the captured alien, while Rex maintained his grip on the prisoner, both of them knowing that this moment represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power between humans and the species that had considered them nothing more than valuable commodities. Amy activated her emergency communication array and transmitted a priority message to Fleet Command, providing coordinates for intercepting the remaining Krillian vessels, while the captured alien warrior lay motionless beside her, his breathing shallow but steady, as Rex maintained a watchful position over their prisoner. The wounded Krillian's translator device flickered weakly as he attempted to speak, his voice carrying the desperate tone of someone who had finally understood the true nature of the creatures he had tried to hunt for profit in the underground slave markets. "Please," the alien whispered through his damaged equipment. "We have information about other hunting fleets, coordinates for their bases, schedules for planned raids against human settlements throughout the frontier sectors." Amy considered the offer, while Rex rumbled with satisfaction, the Shadow Maw's golden eyes reflecting his contentment at having successfully defended his bonded partner's territory against the invading aliens who had underestimated the deadliness of their partnership through their psychic connection. She could sense Rex's instinctive desire to eliminate all traces of the threat to their pack, but Amy's human perspective recognized the strategic value of intelligence gathering that could protect other isolated outposts from similar attacks. The sound of approaching engines echoed across the barren landscape as Fleet Command's rapid response team arrived in orbit, their advanced sensors immediately detecting the wreckage of the Krillian hunting fleet scattered across the rocky terrain below. Amy transmitted her preliminary report while monitoring the captured aliens' vital signs, ensuring that their prisoner remained stable enough to provide useful information about the broader threat posed by organized hunting operations throughout the galaxy. Rex's ears swiveled toward the sky as human dropships began their descent toward the observation post, his enhanced senses identifying the familiar signatures of Allied spacecraft while maintaining his protective stance over Amy and their captive. The lead dropship touched down near the destroyed facility's entrance, disgorging a squad of Marines, who stared in amazement at the carnage surrounding Amy's position, their expressions revealing their inability to comprehend how a single cadet and her companion had eliminated an entire alien hunting force. Colonel Martinez emerged from the command vehicle and approached Amy's position, his experienced eyes taking in the scattered debris of Krillian spacecraft while Rex watched him with the casual interest of a predator evaluating potential threats. "Cadet Rodriguez," the colonel said formally, though his voice carried undertones of respect that hadn't been present during her previous interactions with senior officers. "Your situation report mentioned hostile contact, but this level of destruction suggests something far beyond standard engagement protocols." Amy gestured toward Rex, who responded by lifting his massive head and regarding the colonel with golden eyes that reflected both intelligence and barely contained power, a reminder that humans were no longer alone in their struggle for survival among the stars. The captured Krillian attempted to speak again, his translator producing garbled sounds as he tried to warn the humans about the larger threat they faced from organized hunting syndicates that viewed their species as valuable commodities in the galactic slave trade. Colonel Martinez knelt beside the wounded alien while medical personnel began treating his injuries, ensuring that their source of intelligence remained conscious and capable of providing detailed information about enemy operations throughout the sector. "He claims there are dozens of hunting fleets operating in this region," Amy reported, each one targeting isolated human installations and merchant vessels, with coordination from central command structures that we haven't been able to locate. Rex's low growl indicated his disapproval of the conversation, the Shadow Maw's predatory instincts viewing any delay in eliminating threats as potentially dangerous to the safety of his bonded partner and their extended pack through their mental connection. Amy shared her understanding of the larger strategic situation with Rex, helping him comprehend why preserving this particular enemy might benefit their long-term survival. and the protection of other human communities. The Marine Squad continued, documenting the battlefield while their technical specialists analyzed the wreckage of Krillian technology, searching for intelligence about alien capabilities and potential weaknesses that could be exploited in future encounters. Colonel Martinez studied the tactical data that Amy had gathered during the engagement, his expression shifting from surprise to something approaching awe as he realized the implications of what he was witnessing. The partnership between humans and Shadow Maws represents a fundamental change in our defensive capabilities, he said quietly. But more importantly, it demonstrates that we're no longer the isolated prey species that our enemies assumed us to be. Amy reached for her thermos and poured herself a fresh cup of coffee from the backup supplies in her emergency kit, the familiar ritual helping her process the events of the morning while Rex settled beside her with a satisfied purr. The wounded Krillian's testimony revealed the locations of several hidden bases where captured humans were processed and prepared for auction. Information that would allow Fleet Command to launch rescue operations while disrupting the slave trade networks. Rex's species had never developed concepts like mercy or rehabilitation, but through his bond with Amy, he had begun to understand that sometimes preserving enemies could serve the greater good of protecting the pack from future threats. The colonel activated his communication system and began coordinating with fleet assets throughout the sector, using the intelligence provided by their prisoner to plan simultaneous strikes against multiple hunting operations before they could relocate or destroy evidence. Amy watched the organized activity around her position while considering the broader implications of what had occurred, knowing that word of this engagement would spread throughout the galactic community and fundamentally alter perceptions of human capabilities. The dropship's communication array crackled with reports from other human installations that had detected the sudden withdrawal of alien vessels from their monitoring zones, suggesting that news of the failed hunting operation was already causing widespread panic among potential raiders. Rex had begun playing with a piece of twisted Krillian armor plating, batting it around with his massive paws like an oversized toy, while maintaining awareness of the humans working around their position. Through their psychic bond, Amy could sense the Shadow Maw's satisfaction at having successfully defended their territory, but also his anticipation of future hunts as word spread about the new reality of human-predator partnerships. Colonel Martinez concluded his communications and turned to face Amy with an expression that combined respect, curiosity, and something that might have been envy as he observed the easy partnership between Cadet and apex predator. The age of humans being considered easy prey is officially over, he said with conviction, and I suspect that the galaxy is about to learn exactly what happens when apex predators decide to hunt the hunters. Amy finished her coffee and screwed the cap back onto her thermos, knowing that this morning's events represented just the beginning of a much larger transformation in the balance of power between species throughout the civilized galaxy. Rex stretched his powerful limbs and yawned, revealing teeth that could shred starship armor, while his golden eyes reflected the satisfaction of a predator whose territory had been successfully defended against all challengers. The future belonged to partnerships like theirs, Amy realized, where two species had transcended their individual limitations to become something greater than the sum of their parts, something that the galaxy had never seen before and wasn't prepared to face.